Hello and welcome to day 10 of our 40 Days of Strangers on the Way. I'm so excited to introduce you to a man named Bruce, who I met literally on the top of a mountain in Colorado. Mountain men and women are really fun people to meet. I feel like they always have great stories. And so Bruce taught me something really powerful about seasons and moments of waiting. Which I think we all go through. So Bruce, a Colorado mountain man in the waiting. Our willingness to wait reveals the value we place on the object we are waiting for. It's a quote from Charles Stanley. I had the opportunity to travel to Colorado at the end of one summer. I had never been, but I prayed about taking one last solo summer trip, and suddenly Colorado popped up everywhere. In books, in conversations, across the internet, my soul was craving the mountains, so I booked a trip and entered the mile-high city. This trip was unique. I was about to begin a new job, so I wanted to take some time to reflect and prepare, like a God retreat of sorts. Just like I did in Israel, I prayed, God, would you please prepare every detail? And yet again, he did. A few days in, I hiked up to the summit of a mountain called Mount Cutler. Earlier that morning, I spent some time reading a book called Abba's Child by Brennan Manning. I had never heard of it, but it was on the bookshelf of the Airbnb at home that I was staying in. The book wrecked me. The author explained how we tend to hide our true feelings from others and from God as a form of self-protection. We portray a certain persona to our world and lead a somewhat imposter lifestyle. The author shared that we can go to God just as we are, secure in our true identity, because nothing will change his love for us. I reflected on this book and started asking God questions. God, what do you really think of me? Your love doesn't change for me even when I'm selfish, tired, impatient. How well do I know your heart really? Why don't I have a relationship with you like Moses and Elijah and Paul did? I didn't sense God saying anything, so I laced up my shoes and set out for the trailhead. When I got to the summit of Mount Cutler, there was a bench waiting for me. I sat down and soaked in the gorgeous view. A moment later, I heard a voice. University of Illinois, someone asked. I carried my water bottle and granola bars in a U of I drawstring bag, and this man had noticed. I grew up in Illinois, I told him, but I didn't attend college there. Did you? The older man told me about completing his doctorate work there, and he sat down beside me. I'm Bruce, he said. Nice to meet you. He asked what brought me to Colorado, and I explained my soon-to-be job. When he learned I'd be working in a church, he mentioned that he led a youth group at his church in Texas. You know, he said, the hardest part of working with teens and young adults is when their prayers aren't answered. They don't realize sometimes the answers don't come immediately. Sometimes they come a year later or even longer. I agreed with Bruce and said, our society expects immediacy nowadays. I guess that translates to our relationship with God, too. But sometimes he asks us to wait. He responded, yes, I think that's it. We have trouble waiting. All of a sudden, I flashed back to my prayer that morning. God, why don't I have a relationship with you like Moses and Elijah and Paul did? It was like God was answering me through Bruce. Wait. Keep seeking me and wait. I was just as impatient as those teenagers for an answer to all my prayers. But just because I hadn't sensed an answer right away didn't mean God wasn't working in the background. It didn't mean he wasn't listening or doesn't care. His timetable may have been just a bit different than mine. With the Lord, one day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years like a day, it says in 2 Peter 3:8. And even more, relationships take time to build. Moses and Elijah and Paul spent a lot of time with God. I doubt they knew him perfectly in the beginning. Their relationship grew over time. My relationship with God will grow over time too. And I have a feeling yours will too. So let's wonder. What are you hoping for? What are you waiting for? Ask the Holy Spirit, the presence of God, to bring those dreams to mind. What are you hoping for? What are you waiting for? What are you dreaming of? presence of God, will you bring those dreams to mind? And then let's activate. I invite you to listen to the song Waymaker by Sinach, Sinach. And as the words wash over you, ask God to remind you how He is working behind the scenes in your life. Listen to the song Waymaker. And as the words wash over you, ask God to remind you how He is working behind the scenes in your life. You can even pause this right now. I encourage you to go and do it. And then notice what you sense God revealing to you through this song. And I was just reminded of there's a book called Esther. And in the book of Esther, the name God is not mentioned, but His hand is weaving things behind the scenes. It's almost like a comedy in some ways. There are some serious circumstances, but there's almost this comedy in God's hand being all over the story, but His name not being mentioned. And I think in our lives, sometimes we are like, where are you, God? Where are you? And He's weaving so much behind the scenes that we don't see. And so my prayer is just that the song Waymaker just reminds you that there's so much going on that we don't see. And then let's yield. If you've been pouring your heart out to God, praying the same unanswered prayer over and over, I want you to take heart. God sees, God knows, God cares. Just because you don't see an answer doesn't mean He's not working in the background. My prayer for you today is that He sends you someone like Bruce to encourage you to keep pressing on.